everyone. Very good evening. Am I audible to you all? Let me know if I'm audible to you all. Okay, guys, fine. Okay. In today's concept, we shall discuss about exception. Okay. So, did you guys execute the code? The design, whatever the design I've sent. Did you execute the code which I have done here and the homework program also? Homework design also. Did you guys do it? Okay. 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 You should have done it actually. So yesterday program was I've done it. After that very easy program I gave you. So it should be done by you. Okay, so today's class we shall discuss about the next concept of part 3. Okay. So today we shall start with a part 3 concept. Okay, today we shall start with a part 3 concept. Okay. So our part 3 concept starts from exception. Okay. Exception. Exception means, okay, it is just a problem. Exception means it's a problem that occurs during runtime. Exception. Exception is a problem. Okay. Exception is a problem that occurs during a runtime of the program. During runtime of a program. So whenever exception happens, okay, the execution of the code stops. Execution stops. Execution stops. Okay, that means there will be an unexpected stop. There will be an unexpected stop. Okay, so exception is a problem that occurs during a runtime, and during the exception, okay, during the exception, the second exception occurs, the program will unexpectedly stop. Okay, program will not terminate properly. Program will not terminate fully. Okay, program will not end fully. Instead, it will stop in the between. Okay, wherever the exception occurs, there it will stop. So unexpected stop will happen. So abruptly it will stop. So this is what we call it as exception. And if exception occurs, program will stop there itself. Now let us see the algorithm of the exception and let us understand. So whenever there will be a normal execution going on, whenever there will be a normal execution going on, okay, if there occurs any abnormality, if there occurs any abnormality, if there is any abnormality, okay, if it is yes, if there is an abnormality, okay, the normal execution of the program will be stopped. Normal execution will be paused or stopped. Okay, after that a throwable type object will be created. A throwable type object is created. Throwable type object is created. So after this, in case, now also if exception is not handled, okay, we will ask the question, if exception handled, if exception handled, okay, if it is a yes, if the exception is handled, if the exception is okay, we shall take it here. Okay, if exception is not handled, if exception is not handled, the program will stop abruptly. So abrupt stop will be there. Abrupt stop will be there. But in case if there is an exception which is handled, okay, there is an exception which is handled, so handled exception, okay, will be having a normal execution, will be having a normal execution. If there is no abnormality, if there is no abnormality also, program will end up with the normal execution, and normally a program will stop. Okay, normally a program will stop. So here, okay, here what's happening is, when there is a normal execution going on in a Java program, if any abnormality arises, okay, if there is no abnormality, normal execution will be happening, and the program will stop it. Okay, program will stop the exception, stop the execution of a code. Okay, now in case there is an abnormality, yes, if there is an abnormality, normal execution will be paused. Normal execution will be paused. After passing a normal execution, a throwable type object is created. After passing a normal execution, a throwable type object is created. After creating, still if exception is handled, we will check. If it is not handled, we will have an abrupt stop. We'll have an abrupt stop. But if it is handled, yes, if it is handled, yes, it is handled. Now again it will end up with a normal execution, and normally the program will stop. Okay, so this is what happens when an exception occurs. Okay, this is what happens when an exception occurs. And you have to know exception always occurs because of a statement. Exception occurs because of that one statement in a program. Always, 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 any exception occurs because of that one statement in the Java program. Okay, now this statement will throw the exception. It will throw the exception during the abnormal situation. During the abnormal situation. During the abnormal situation. Okay, so here always remember, one statement is only responsible for an exception, and that statement, it will throw an exception during the abnormal situation. Okay, now let us study the types of exceptions. Okay, so yeah, there are few types of exceptions. Okay, the exceptions are two types, that is checked and unchecked. Okay, checked and unchecked exception. So we have two types, checked exception and unchecked exception. So under checked exception, we have a runtime exception. Okay, and its child members. Okay, runtime exception and its child members. Next, unchecked exception. We have IO exception. Okay, input output exception, SQL exception, AWT exceptions. Okay, and interrupted exception. Okay, so these kind of exceptions will be there. These are the parent exceptions. Okay, so under runtime exceptions, okay, along with the child classes of that exception comes under a okay, this comes under unchecked, and this comes under checked. Okay, so this comes under a checked. Okay, so under unchecked, you will have a runtime exception under childs. Under checked, you will have IO exception, SQL, AWT, okay, and interrupted exception. Here we will see input output exception. Okay, SQL you will not see here. Okay, so all of these most of the time you will be seeing in advanced classes. And the interrupted exception also, here you might see this. Okay, and runtime exception and its child members, such as arithmetic exception, okay, null pointer exception, and class cast exception, and index out of bounds exception. Under index out of bounds exception, we have two more childs, that is array index out of bounds exception and a string index out of bounds exception. These are the two types. In a input output exception, we have file not found exception. Okay, and we have interrupted IO exception, and we have EOF exception. Okay, so these two and the remaining these three you will see in advanced classes. Here you can't see that. For learning this itself you have to understand advanced concept. So here we can only go for input output exception, okay, then file not found exception and this unchecked exceptions, that is runtime exception, and all these child exceptions of runtime. Okay, so why we call this as a unchecked, why we call these exceptions as a checked? Because whenever a exception is happening in a code, okay, suppose there is an exception in a program, okay, we have written one beautiful program, okay, there is an exception in one statement, okay, here there is an exception, okay, here there is an exception. Now here, now if compiler is aware of this exception, if compiler is aware of this exception, then we shall tell it is a checked exception. Okay, when compiler is aware that in this line there is one exception, when compiler is aware that in this line there is an exception, okay, so compiler knows that there is an exception, and that type of exceptions is called as checked exceptions. Okay, and we have written one more code. Somewhere here there is an exception, okay, somewhere here there is an exception, but your compiler is unable to find it, this is called as unchecked exception. Compiler don't know that there is an exception, is called as unchecked exceptions. See guys, checked exception means compiler aware exception. Checked exception means compiler aware exception is called as a checked exception. Unchecked exception means compiler unaware exception is called as unchecked exception. Okay, now you have to know that whenever compiler finds that there is an exception in a program, okay, whenever compiler finds that there is an exception in a program, the compiler forces the programmer, okay, it will force the programmer to do two things, either to handle the exception or to declare the exception, when compiler knows that there is an exception in the code in this line, okay, compiler will throw an exception that is called as checked exception. Now compiler aware is called as a checked exception. Now whenever compiler knows that there is an exception, compiler will not sit quietly. Surely compiler will not sit quietly. Compiler will force the programmer to handle the exception or to declare the exception. If you are not obeying compiler and you are doing however you want, so compiler will throw one unaware exception. Okay, it's like when suppose it will tell one unreported, it will give one unreported compile time error if you are not obeying this rule. Okay, so what you have to do, whenever compiler finds that there is an exception in a program, okay, that is called as checked exception. When compiler finds that there is an exception, compiler will not sit quietly. Instead, compiler will force the programmer to handle the exception or to declare the exception. To handle the exception or to declare the exception. To handle or declare the exception. A programmer can handle the exception or a programmer can declare the exception. Anyone is fine. Anyone a programmer does, your compiler will not give any error. Okay. Next, here. Now, if a compiler is unaware, that means compiler don't know that there is an exception in this line. So now what will happen? Compiler don't know. When compiler is unaware or compiler don't know that there is an exception, it will not force the programmer. To handle the exception also. It will not force the programmer to declare the exception also. It will not force the programmer to handle the exception also. It will also not force the programmer to declare the exception also. Okay. So this is how your checked and unchecked exceptions are present. Okay. Now, so here, if you're seeing the hierarchy, okay, if you're seeing the hierarchy of an exception, okay, if you're seeing the hierarchy of an exception, first comes is a throwable class. Okay, first comes is a throwable class. See guys, this throwable, okay, this throwable is a parent class of both exception as well as a error. It is parent for both exception as well as a error. Okay, parent class, throwable is a parent class. It is defined in java.lang package. Java.lang package. Okay, and throwable has both exception as well as a error. Now here in the throwable class only we have a inbuilt classes, that is under exception and a error. Exception is also one class, error is also one class. Under that also we have many classes. So what all the classes we have under throwable, all the classes are toString overridden. All the classes, whatever the exception, whatever error you can take, all are toString overridden. Okay, all the classes are toString overridden. Okay. Okay, what is the proof that it's a toString overridden? See guys, whenever you find an exception in a console, in output console, whenever you find an exception in the output console, okay, you will see the fully qualified name of that exception. Why? Because of the toString is overridden there. toString is already implemented there in all the exception class and error class. Okay, such that you will get one fully qualified name of that exception or error. Okay, first you'll get the fully qualified name, colon, then you'll get a reason for the exception. Okay, first you'll get a fully qualified name of the exception, then you'll get a reason for that exception. So any exception you might get, okay, all the exceptions are toString overridden, because if an exception or error occurs, okay, first a fully qualified name will be shown, then the reason for the exception will be shown. Okay, reason for the exception will be shown. That is why all the classes in the throwable, okay, under throwable are toString overridden. Okay, now here there are two important methods of throwable class. That is get message method and print stack trace method. Get message method and the string stack trace method are the two important throwable class methods. Okay, now here under exception, okay, let us see the hierarchy first. Okay, under exception we have so many types. Okay, let us see one by one. So under exception, firstly you have arithmetic exception. You have a runtime exception first. Yeah, runtime exception is a parent. Okay, so you have a parent exception, that is runtime exception. So under runtime exception you have arithmetic exception. Okay, you have null pointer exception. Okay, you have class cast exception. Okay, and you have index out of bounds exception. In index out of bounds exception you have array index out of bounds exception, as well as string index out of bounds exception. Okay, next comes to one more exception, that is input output exception. In input output exception we have file not found exception. Okay, and interrupted IO exception and EOF exception. Okay, next coming to some more SQL exceptions and AWT exceptions and interrupted exceptions. So under error we have so many. Okay, under we have virtual machine error. Under error we have virtual machine error. Okay, so under virtual machine error we have stack overflow error. Stack overflow error. Under stack overflow error, we have out of memory error. Out of memory error. Okay. So under error only, we have assertion error. Okay. Assertion error. Next, exception in initialization error. Okay. Then comes input output error. After that, AWT error. So don't worry about these errors. Okay, you will see these errors and all of these in the future classes. All of these in the future advanced classes you will see. Okay. Now in here, okay, in here only runtime exception and a error. Okay. Under exception, only runtime exception and error are the unchecked, comes under unchecked. Okay, comes under unchecked. Okay, so here in the throwable, okay, guys, can you tell me what time it got disconnected? Can you tell me what time it got disconnected, everyone? Exception concept. Starting itself, it got disconnected. 2 minutes before. Okay, 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 guys. Fine, fine, fine. At the end, okay, okay, fine. Okay, okay. Yes, guys. Fine, fine, fine. Last 3 minutes. Okay. So I was talking about. Okay, fine. Because there's a heavy rain here, so it's okay. Okay, so I was talking about the exception hierarchy and a throwable hierarchy. So I told you what is the difference between the checked exception and the unchecked exception. Checked exception is an exception where compiler is aware that there is an exception. When compiler is aware, it will force the programmer to handle the exception or the declare the exception. If a compiler is, if a programmer is not following any of it, so surely programmer will get one unreported compile time error. In order to not get that, a programmer should handle or declare the exception. Okay, then comes the exception. So exception under unchecked exception. Under unchecked exception itself means that compiler is unaware of it. Okay, compiler is unaware of the exception that it exists. When compiler don't know that there is an exception, it will not force the programmer to handle or declare. It will not force the programmers to handle as well as declare. That is called as unchecked exception. See guys, throwable class is a parent class for all the exception and error as well, and it is overridden toString method. It is overridden toString method. When throwable is overridden, obviously their childs also is overridden. So all the classes including throwable and here exception and errors and its child classes are all toString overridden. ToString overridden in such a way that whenever the exception occurs, whenever the exception occurs, whenever the exception occurs in the console, you will be having fully qualified name of the exception. Then you will have a reason for that exception. Okay, if you are getting exception in the output console, it will be in the form of first fully qualified name of the exception, then what is the reason for that exception also we will know. Okay, reason for the exception also we will know. That is why your toString is overridden in the throwable. Next, here there are two important methods of throwable. Okay, there are two important methods of throwable, that is get message method and a print stack trace method. Get message method and a print stack trace method. These are the two methods. We will use this in the future classes. Okay, now see, this is the exception childs and this is a error childs. So under exception you have runtime exception, input output exception, SQL exception, IWT exception, interpret exception. So here in the error we have these all errors we have. I have already told you this, but there was network issue. It's okay. You don't have to study about these errors. You will see these errors in the future classes. In advanced classes you will see. Okay. What you have to know is runtime exception and error comes under unchecked exception. Runtime exception and error. Runtime exception as well as errors comes under unchecked exception. They both come under unchecked exception. Unchecked means compiler is unaware of it. Okay. Now we were seeing unchecked exceptions. So here we have the statements. Okay. Here we have the statements which are responsible for the unchecked exception, and we will see what kind of exception it will throw. So I was about to ask you guys a question. 4 by 2 is 2 only. What is 0 by 2? Anyone? Can you tell me what is 0 by 2? Yes, it is infinity. Okay, infinity. Okay, so 0 by 2 is infinity, and in Java we don't have anything to indicate infinity. So what we'll do is here to indicate that it is divided by 0, we get, okay, we get a exception. Okay, here, okay, here suppose you are dividing a number, okay, by 0. Suppose you are dividing a number by 0. Okay, you are dividing a number by 0. Now what happens when you are dividing a number by 0? You will get arithmetic exception. Okay, you will get a arithmetic exception whenever you are dividing any number by, any number by 0, any 0 by any number. Suppose 0 by any number, you will end up with the arithmetic exception. Okay, the statement which is responsible for arithmetic exception is this A by B. Okay, A by B. Now here let us see some more. So here reference dot member. Okay, so when you're going for reference dot member, see guys, assume there is one object. Okay, 0x1. Now reference variable A is pointing towards that. Okay, when you make it as a null, this object will not be there. When you make it as a null, this object will not be there. Now here, so A is pointing towards null. Okay, A is pointing towards null or nothing. So when you tell A dot any member name, if you call, See, there is no member name currently. Currently, there is no member name because we have nullified it. We have nullified it. Now, when there is nothing, if you will not be able to call any member with the reference variable a dot that member name, a dot that member name, you'll not be able to call because there will be no memory present. There will be no memory present of it. Okay, so that is why if you're trying to go for reference dot member, you'll end up with a null pointer exception. Null pointer exception. So when it happens is when you don't have any object of that reference variable. Okay, if suppose that reference variable has null inside it. Suppose this reference variable has null inside it with a null dot member. Null dot member obviously we can't because there is nothing inside null. Okay, so that is why you will get a arithmetic exception. Okay, you will get a arithmetic, null pointer exception for this. Okay, next after this. Okay, so after this we shall see the next one. So the next one is class name of reference. Class name of reference. So as I told you in the previous classes, okay, suppose you have one parent class and you have one child class. Now without upcasting, you can't do downcasting. But suppose without upcasting, you're directly doing downcasting. Without upcasting, you're directly doing downcasting. You will get a class cast exception. You will get a class cast exception. We have seen this in inheritance concept. Inheritance concept, where from one class if you upcast and if you're downcasting to one more class, you will get a class cast exception. Same way, if you're not upcasting, but you are downcasting, you'll get a class cast exception. Okay. Now, okay, so here class name of reference. Okay, if you're trying to downcast one reference to a class from which you didn't upcast, if you're trying to downcast to a class from which you didn't upcast, okay, that class will not have the reference of another class, so you will get a class cast exception. Class cast exception. You'll get a class cast exception. Okay, now suppose we have assume we have few elements. Okay, some array, suppose 9 4 6 8. We have to access this with the help of index 0 1 2 3. Okay, now suppose array is pointing towards this data. So array of 0 is 9. Array of 1 is 4. Array of 2 is 6. Array of 3 is 8. But in case if you're trying to access array of 4, where there is no fourth index is not there. Okay, fourth index is not there here. Now since fourth index is not there here, now this is the border. Okay, this is the boundary. You should not cross this boundary. Okay, you should not cross this boundary because you have the elements till the index 3 only. Okay, you have the elements till the index 3 only, but there is no index 4 elements. At the index 4 there are no elements actually. So when you're trying to access out of the boundary, when you try to access an array elements out of the boundary, you will get a array index out of bounds exception. You will get array index out of bounds exception. Okay. And second. Okay. So what exception you will get is you will get, okay, so array reference, any array reference of index. Okay, if you're trying to access an index which is not there, okay, which is not there, you will end up with a array index out of bounds exception. Array index out of bounds exception. Okay. Now next one. These we are seeing under unchecked. We are seeing all these under unchecked. Okay. Now array index out of bound exception, fine. Next, here. Now suppose we have the name. Okay. Suppose we have the name Kumar. Kumar. Suppose it is in the form of string. Okay. String. Yes. Kumar is there. And if you want to access it, you can access through index 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. Okay, let me take it in a string format only. Okay, suppose you have string yes is equal to Kumar. Okay, now if you want to access all the elements of this string, you can go with the index 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Suppose if you go for s dot char out of index 0, you will get a k. Char out of index 1, you will get a u. Char out of index 2, you will get a m. Char out of index 3, you will get a char out of index 4, you will get a r. So you will get Kumar, Kumar you will get. But in case if you're trying to go for s dot char out of index 5, there is no such index. Here there is no such index. So since we are crossing the boundary and trying to access element which is not there. Since we are crossing the boundary and trying to access an element which is not there, we will end up with a string index out of bounds exception. We'll end up with string index out of bounds exception. So yeah, you'll end up with string index out of bounds exception. Now, okay, so here is string dot char out of index. Okay, here you can expect a string index out of bounds exception. Okay, in the same we have a substring method, right? String dot substring method, substring of index. Here also if you're trying to access an index which is out of the limit, okay, you will still get a string index out of bounds exception. String index out of bounds exception. Okay, so these are the checked exception, unchecked exceptions. Okay, so one second, let me show you. One second, guys. Okay, so here in the unchecked exceptions, okay, under unchecked exceptions, you get arithmetic exception, null pointer exception, class cast exception, index out of bounds exception, okay, string index out of bounds exception. Okay, you will get all these. These are coming under unchecked. Exceptions. We have not yet seen checked exceptions. Okay, we are seeing just unchecked exceptions. Now what we shall do is we will see in real how using code we shall get these exceptions in the console. Okay, having a solution for this is a later thing. Okay, first let us see how to get these exceptions in the console. Okay, so for that, now currently let us create one exception folder here. in the E23, we shall create one package exception handling. Okay, now we have created a package under exception handling. Under exception handling, we shall create one class. Okay, we shall create one class. Class name is arithmetic exception. See, you already know that arithmetic exception is a class name. Arithmetic exception is a class name. Just now we have seen arithmetic exception. Exceptions have a child classes also. Okay, so this is a class name. You should never give, okay, the same names. You should never use the same class names, and you should never use any inbuilt method or inbuilt variables to do some other tasks. Okay, that is not possible. So currently we have a arithmetic exception, so you should not take it like this. Instead, what you can do, at the last you can enter program. So it has become arithmetic exception program. It has now become arithmetic exception program. So now here let us go for main method. So here if we are taking the input from user, suppose let us take input from user, import java dot util dot scanner class. Okay, scanner class. Now we shall go for creating an object for scanner. Scanner AC is equal to new scanner of system dot in. So after this, we shall ask user to enter one number. Enter first number. Okay, and we shall take it int a is equal to AC dot next int next. We shall go for enter second number. Okay, enter second number. So int b is equal to sc dot next int. Now shall go for int result is equal to a by b. Okay, int result is equal to a by b. Now here, okay, now here what will happen is listen carefully, listen everyone carefully. Now suppose we take the data first data. Suppose if we take 10, second data we take it as a 5. Since we are not printing, we are not getting, we shall print it. Okay, so we shall get the output 2. 5 2s are 10. Suppose if we are taking 10 and here 5, you will get a 2 because that is the output. Okay, that is a division output. Now here, instead of 10, if I give 0, okay, instead of 10 I'll give 0 here. So let us run the code again. Now I'll give 0, second number is 5. Okay, 0 by anything, okay, okay, so we shall take 5 by 0. Shall run the code. Okay, we shall take 5 and 0. Okay, so here we get a arithmetic exception. Okay, so yeah, anything divided by 0 is a 0, and so any number you are dividing by 0, it is a infinity. Any number, 0 by anything is 0 only, but any number divided by 0 is a, you will get a arithmetic exception. Okay, so this is how you get a arithmetic exception. Okay, arithmetic exception, this is how you will get. So arithmetic exception, you will be dividing by 0. See, I already told you all these arithmetic exceptions or whatever the error classes are there, they are all two-string overridden. How? See here, while you are getting an exception, you are getting the exceptions fully qualified name. Exceptions fully qualified name you are getting. So after that, you are getting a reason for that exception. What is the reason for that exception? Because we are dividing by 0. Okay, we are dividing by 0. So since we are dividing it by 0, there is nothing else to indicate that to divide it by 0. So what we'll get? You'll get a arithmetic exception. You will get a arithmetic exception. Now, this is a problem. Let us have this problem here. These are unchecked exceptions, whatever we'll see now. But your compiler will not force. Compiler don't know that there is an exception here. Compiler don't know that there is an exception. But here statement number 13, that's line number 13, is responsible for the exception. So how do you know that which line is responsible? See here, fully qualified name of the exception you are getting. Okay, and the reason for the exception you are getting, divide by 0. Then here you are getting the line number. Okay, here you are getting a line number where you have an exception. Line number, what is the line number where we have an exception? That is line number 13. Line number 13. So this is the line which is responsible for the exception. It is responsible for the exception. Okay, then here. So first number is 5, second number is 0. 5 by 0, it will go for infinity. So you get a java.lang.arithmetic exception, and the reason for the exception is dividing by 0, and the statement which is responsible for exception is 13, line number 13. Here we have an exception. Okay, let this exception be. Now we will not see how to handle or declare. First, let us see all kinds of unchecked exceptions. Okay, so this is about your arithmetic. Now let us go for the null pointer exception. So let us create one class, null pointer exception program. Null pointer exception program. Okay. Now we shall go for main method. Okay. Now after going into main method, now we shall take, okay, we shall take a string. Okay, we shall take a string yes is equal to, earlier we'll go for Kumar. Next we shall reinitialize string to null. Okay, we shall initialize string to null. Now if I go for next println statement, if I go for s dot to uppercase, okay, I want to go for to uppercase here. Okay, now let us execute it. Okay, I am trying to change the case here. Let us execute. So what are we getting here? Null pointer exception we are getting. Why? Because here we cannot invoke string dot to uppercase because variable s is null. We cannot invoke string dot to uppercase because the variable s is a null. Variable s is a null. Okay. So this is about your null pointer exception. Null you can't do any operation with the null. Okay, null dot any method or null dot any member, if you're trying to call, surely you'll not get, because inside null there is nothing. Okay, inside null there is nothing. So that is why here s dot to uppercase or to lowercase, any operation you do with the null, it will remain null only. But for the null we are trying to go for uppercase. We are trying to do uppercase. So that is why here you got a qualified name, then you'll get a reason for the exception because the s is null. The variable s is null. Here the line where there is a exception, the statement or the line which is responsible for the exception is line number 9. Line number 9. So line number 9 is responsible for the exception. Okay, now this is about the null pointer exception. Next we shall go for one more, that is class cast. So what we shall do is we shall select the folder exception handling. Okay, then we shall create one class. Why it's not happening? E23 SRC, and here we shall go for exception handling. Okay. So the class name here we can give as class first exception class cast exception program. Okay. Now here we have a class cast exception program. Then we shall have a main method. So what we shall do is we have a class. We have a class here. Now let us make this class as a child for arithmetic exception. Okay. So let us make this class as a child for arithmetic exceptions. So extends arithmetic exception program class. We are making the arithmetic exception program class as a parent for a class cast exception. Okay. We are having arithmetic exception as a parent exception for the class cast exception Now, what we shall do is we shall go for upcasting without downcasting. I mean, okay, instead of downcasting, I mean, sorry, upcasting, directly we'll do downcasting. Okay, instead of upcasting directly, we shall go for downcasting. So we shall get this exception. So downcasting, how we can do without upcasting? Very simple. Very simple. We'll go for class cast exception program. CCE is equal to, now we are downcasting class cast exception program to the instance of arithmetic exception program. Okay, so if you can see here, we have not upcasted, but we are downcasting the instance of arithmetic exception. Okay, see here we have only one line wherein we are just downcasting. We are just downcasting. We are not upcasting, but instead we are downcasting. We are downcasting the arithmetic exception program without upcasting. So without upcasting, if you try to do downcasting directly, you will end up with a class cast exception. Okay, you'll end up with class cast exception. Okay, so this is the reason here. Without upcasting, see, we have made the arithmetic exception program as a child for the, I mean, as a parent for this child class cast exception program. Okay, now here we are downcasting the class cast exception program to, I mean, we are downcasting arithmetic exception to the class cast exception program. We have not upcasted, but we are trying to downcast. Okay, we are downcasting without upcasting. Without upcasting, if you're trying to downcast, you will be getting a class cast exception. You will get a class cast exception. Okay, so reason is very little big. Okay, so let it be the reason you'll get. Now where is the line which is responsible for the exception? Okay, here is the line. Line number 7. Okay, so line number 7 is responsible. Line number 7 is responsible for the exception. This is the line. Line number 7 is responsible for the exception. Okay, now without upcasting, if you try to do downcasting, you will get a class cast exception. Okay, next, after this, okay, let us go for the next one. Okay, let us go for the next one. So the next one will be array index out of bounds exception. Okay, so the next one will be array index out of bounds exception. So we'll go for array index exception. Array index exception program. Okay, so we have taken in short array index exception Okay. Now here we shall go for main method. Now here we have a main method here, array index exception program. Okay, main method is there, fine. Now we shall take an array, int a array is equal to, shall take 1 2 3 4 5. Okay, now we have to print this. Okay, we have to print this. We have so many options. We can go for each, we can go for loop also. Now what we will do is we shall go for a for loop. For int I is equal to 0 index. Okay, I less than a dot length and I plus plus. Okay, now we shall go for printing the every element of it. Okay, so we shall go for printing array of I. Okay, array of I, all the elements. Now, can you guys tell me the output of this program? Can you guys tell me the output of this program? Yes, everyone? Can you guess the output of this program? Everyone? What is the output? Guys, am I audible to you, everyone? Guys, am I audible to you, everyone? Let me know if I'm audible to you all. Voice is breaking. Okay. For how many of you voice is breaking? Let me know. Okay, sure. For how many of you voice is breaking? If I'm audible properly or if the voice is breaking, do let me know. Audible. Okay. So I was asking you output of this program. I've taken an array 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and I'm printing this. Now what will be the output? Yes, everyone. What will be the output of this array? Be quick. Really? 1, 2, 3, 4? Okay. Okay, see the output, everyone. You're getting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yes, Deepika is correct. So we have got 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. Why? Because we have taken I less than length. Okay, I should be less than the array dot length. Always remember. So a dot length method. Length is 5. Okay, length is 5. Index starts from 0 to 4. Length is 5 only. Index starts from 0 to 4 here. We'll start from 0 to 4. Okay. Next here. Okay. In here. Now after this, next. Okay. So can you tell me the answer now? Less than or equals to a dot length. Now what will be the output? What will be the output now? Yes, guys, can you guess the answer here? What will be the output? Really? Output will be that? Are you guys sure? Check the condition first. Check the condition. What will be the output? Okay, see here, when you go for I less than a dot length, okay, I less than a dot length. Here, you are including the length also. You will get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 along with that. No, you will not get 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. We are printing the elements, not the index. Here we don't have 0 here. Here we don't have 0, okay. So here, it will print the elements 5, along with that it will print the exception. See, it will print 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Along with that, it will also print the exception. That is array index out of bounds exception. Yes, it will print 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Along with that, array index out of bound exception, it will print. So, reason for that exception is index 5 out of bounds for length 5. Index 5 out of bounds for length 5 means index is 5, but we have index till 4 only. We have the index till 4. Okay, we have the index till 4. Okay, now since we have index till 4 only, we have to access from 0 to 4 only. We cannot access index number 5. We cannot access index number 5. So this is the reason you get array index out of bounds exception. Okay, so this is the reason you will get a array index out of bounds exception. Array index out of bounds exception. Okay, next. So next one we shall go for string. Create one class for string index exception. So I am giving the class names as some other different names, not the inbuilt class names. Okay, I'm just giving some different names. Now here, let us go for main method. Now after getting into the main method, next here, now we shall go for string yes is equal to Kumari. Okay, now here we have to print every element of the string. For int I is equal to index 0, I less than h dot length and I plus plus. Okay, now here what we shall do is you have to print, okay, s dot character at index I. Okay, so index I starting from index 0 till less than length. So length is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So length is 6 and the data or the index should be less than the length. It should be less than length. So the indexes will be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it should be from 0 to 5. Okay, not 6. So it should be less than the length. Length is 6 only, but it should be less than, okay, less than length. Now since we are printing every index, here s dot caret of I, now you will get the data Kumari. Okay, so let us execute. Okay, now here, what we shall do is let us go for less than h dot length. Okay, so now what happens is, okay, now what happens is you will end up with a string index out of bounds exception. You'll end up with string index out of bounds exception. You'll end up with string index out of bounds exception. So let us execute the code. Let's run the code here. Can you see here? string index out of bounds exception. Okay, now we are having string index out of bounds exception. Here, string index out of bound exception, yes, because the reason is the string index out of range 6. Okay, string index out of range and the index is 6. It should be from 0 to 5, but we are trying to access the 6th index. Okay, that is index number 6 also. We are trying to use it. So that is why we are getting a string index out of bounds exception. Okay, so this is about our exceptions. This is about our exception. So we have seen unchecked exception, that is arithmetic, null pointer, class cast, array index, and a string index out of bounds exception. Okay, now here we shall easily elements are by index or up to 4. Yeah, yeah. But here elements were 6. Okay, and index should be till 5. If it is till 6, you will be getting a problem, that is string index out of bounds exception. Okay, next. This is how your exception occurs in an unchecked exceptions. This is how your exception occurs in an unchecked exception. I hope everybody is clear. Did you guys get the concept of exceptions now? Here, did you guys understand until till here? Unchecked exceptions also, did you guys understand? Everyone? You guys got it? Let me know. Last one, repeater. See, if you are trying to access till Kumari, that is fine. But after Kumari, if you try to access any index, you will not get it. However, you have seen this now, this in array index. Here, after reaching the length, reaching the length, here there are 6 characters. Length is also 6, but you should access till less than 6 only. From 0 to 5, you should access till less than 6 only. You should access till less than 6 only. Okay, so that is why you will get a string index out of bounds exception. You will get a string index out of bounds exception. Okay. Yes, Sanket, understood? Okay. Okay, guys. So here we have seen, how to get these exceptions. Okay, we have seen how to get these exceptions. Okay, now let us see how to handle these exceptions. Okay, now what we have to do is we have to handle the exception. We have to handle the exception. Okay, now let us see how to handle it. Now, guys, here, okay, here any exception, if it is unchecked, okay, if it is unchecked or if it is checked, if it is unchecked or if it is checked, in unchecked, if you are getting the exception in the console, okay, you can still handle it. Whatever the unchecked exception you get, no, you can still handle the exception. Okay, or you can declare the exception. This is not mandatory, okay, for the unchecked. But for the checked, okay, for the checked, it is mandatory to handle or declare the exception. To handle or declare the exception. Okay. Now here, for the unchecked exception, currently we are studying about a unchecked exception. Currently we are studying about a unchecked exception, and here in the console you can see the exception. Now for this, let us handle an exception for unchecked exceptions. Let us handle an exception for the unchecked exception, okay. Now, so we will learn a exception handling today. Okay, when you're trying to handle an exception, it is called as exception handling. Exception handling. See guys, exception handling is a mechanism. It is a mechanism which is used in Java. Which is used in Java. That is used to continue the normal flow of execution. To continue the normal flow of execution when the exception occurs. When the exception occurs during runtime. Okay. See guys, exception handling is a great mechanism. It is a great mechanism. Okay. And inside your Java. Okay. Exception handling is a mechanism in your Java. Okay. Which is used to continue the normal flow of execution, which is used to continue the normal flow of execution when the exception occurs during the runtime. When the exception occurs during the runtime. Okay. Now how do we handle this exception? How do we handle this exception? We can handle the exception with try and catch block. Okay, we can handle the exception. We can handle the exception with try and catch block. With try and catch block. Okay. So how we have to use this? How we have to use this try and catch? Okay. In what way or what process you will get the solution for this exception? Okay. Now let us see. So I told we have to use a try and catch blocks. Try and catch blocks in order to handle the exception. Okay. Now let us go for the try block. Try is a keyword. Okay. And this is a try block. In the try block, okay, you have to write the statements which is responsible for exceptions. The statements which are responsible for exception. The statements which are responsible for exception, we'll write it in try block. So inside the try block, we shall write the statements which are responsible for the exceptions. Okay, that in the try block. Next, here, now whenever you write a exception, okay, or whenever you write a statement which will give exception inside this try block, what happens is when an exception occurs, execution of the whole block, whatever the main method block is there, now everything will be stopped. Okay. Now after that, one throwable type object is created. Okay, and that throwable type will be excuse me. The throwable type object will be thrown to the catch block. It will be thrown to the catch block. Okay, so this is how it goes. So whatever the exceptions we write in the try block, it will create one throwable type object. Okay, it will create one throwable type object. So after creating a throwable type object, it will be thrown. Okay, it will be thrown to the catch block. It will be thrown to the catch block. Okay, now here inside the catch block, you have to declare one throwable type object. Okay, you have to declare one throwable type object. Okay, now in the catch block also you have to write what is the reason for the reason for this exception, and you can also write how we can overcome it. Okay, so here in the try block you can write any number of statements. In the try block you can write any number of statements. Okay, and all of them will execute from top to bottom order. If a first statement is having an issue, first statement itself is having an issue, then here we will be getting our throwable type object, and that will throw to the catch block. Okay, now here in the try block We can write n number of statements, and which statement will find exception and which statement will have exception, that statement will create an object of throwable type, and it will be thrown to the catch block. So you have to concentrate on one thing here. So what type of exception has been thrown? No, only that type of exception only can be caught. Okay, so what type of exception is thrown, okay, that type of exception will be called. Okay, are you guys getting? What type of exception is thrown, that type of exception will get caught in the catch block. Because see here, if you have an arithmetic exception here, and if you're going for null pointer exception here, that will be a big mistake, big error. Okay, if you have arithmetic exception here in the try, okay, in the try, if you have arithmetic exception, in the catch also you should start with arithmetic exception. You have to start with arithmetic exception. Okay, now here inside the catch block, here, see, catch block is used to catch the throwable type object. Okay, throwable type object with a reference, okay, with a reference. Catch block is used to catch the throwable type reference thrown by the try block. Okay, now here. So when can we tell that the exception is handled? Yeah, we have seen a structure for this now, exception handling. Now, when can we tell if the exception is handled? See guys, when an exception occurred, okay, when an exception occurred from the try block, when an exception occurred, that statement, it will create one throwable type object. It will create one throwable type object. So after creating throwable type object, your try block, okay, your try block, what it will do, it will throw it to the catch block. So when it is throwing in catch block, what type of data is being thrown and what type of data we are using, both should be same. Okay, so which means here now, suppose you are throwing a arithmetic exception. If I have arithmetic exception with a reference, that will be good, because what type of exception you have, that type of exception only you have to handle. What are the type of exception you have? Okay, only that type of exception should be handled. If you have a null pointer exception, here you will get you'll have to write null pointer exception. Okay, so this is how we shall go for handling an exception with the try and catch. So what are the statements which are responsible for exception will be written inside the try block, and inside the catch block, here we will be writing the reasons for that exception. In case if the here we shall write the reasons for the exception. In case if the try block is giving the throwable type object and the throwable is caught by the catch block. The second catch block catches the exception. We shall tell the exception is handled. If catch blocks not caught the, okay, if catch blocks doesn't catch the any kind of exception, then we shall still have that exception in the console. Okay, we shall still have that exception in the console. Okay, so this is how you handle an exception, not declare. I have not taught you how to declare an exception. Here we are just seeing how to handle an exception. Okay, so we have created so many exception classes. Right? So now what we shall do is we shall go and here we shall try to handle the exception. You have to first see which line is responsible for the exception here. Okay, in here, the line which is responsible for exception. So can anyone tell what is the line which is responsible for the exception in the class arithmetic exception? Which line is responsible for the exception? Anyone? Yes, correct. line number 13. Okay, line number 13, because any number, if it is dividing by 0, you will get it as a infinite. Okay, you'll get it as a infinite. Okay, now suppose, so I want to make this statement good. Now what I will do, I'll just take this statements inside a try block. Okay, so here, now, so inside try block we have the statement which is responsible for the exception, and we have to go for a catch block also, because here in the try block, here in this statement, it will throw an exception. This statement will throw an exception here. Okay, now, so when you go for a by b, obviously it is a division. Now any number divided by 0, you will get an infinity. Okay, so here a by b, you will get a exception, and that exception will be converted into a throwable type object, and that throwable type object will be thrown to the catch block. The throwable type object will be thrown to the catch block. So here currently in the catch block, see, you have to see what type of exception is been told. Okay, what kind of exceptions is been given here. This is an arithmetic. Okay, arithmetic type. So here we have to see what type of exception is this. Since we have a by b, we can easily tell this is a arithmetic exception. So here you have to mention the name of that exception. Here we have to name the exception name. Okay, now here we have to have the reference variable e. Okay, now here so we shall tell the reason for the exception, that is we shall tell to the user that. Okay, now here shall tell don't divide by 0. Don't divide by 0. Okay, now earlier we used to get an exception here, but now, okay, but now we will handle the exception. See, the statement which are responsible for exception we have written in line number 14 and is within the try block. Now what we have to do is, so inside the catch block you have to mention what type of exception is present there. Okay, you have to mention what type of exception is present there. Then you have to go for one variable. Now here, so here you will get the okay, so this is the statement which is responsible for exception. This will throw a throwable type object. Okay, it will create one throwable type object and it will throw to the catch block. It will throw to the catch block. So here here there is a error. One here there is an exception. This is the statement which is responsible for exception. Now you have to check if it is dividing by 0 or not. If it is dividing by 0, we shall tell it's a infinite. Okay, you'll get a arithmetic exception. Now here we have a result fine. Now we have a catch block here. Now in the catch block you can write whatever the type of exception you are having here. So here we have arithmetic exception. So here we shall take the same arithmetic exception here. Okay, we shall take the same arithmetic exception here. Okay, now here, okay, here the reason for that exception is, see, this is a statement which is responsible for exception. It will throw two arithmetic exception by creating a throwable type object. Now here, if you execute the code, you will get the reason don't divide by 0. You get the reason don't divide by 0. Okay, so enter first number 10, second number 5, so you'll get the output 2. Next, if we enter the same, now enter the first number, 5 divided by 0. So what are we getting now? Don't divide by 0. So we are getting that, okay, we are getting that don't divide by 0. So the reason behind don't divide by 0 is we have handled the exception. So program is not stopping suddenly. Okay, program is not, program is, excuse me. So here we have a exception. Now here we have a solution for it. Without a catch block, we can't tell that the exception is handled. Okay, if the catch block catches the exception, then only we shall tell exception is handled, or else we shall tell exception is not handled. In a try block, we will write the statement which is responsible for exception, and in the catch block, we will create that type of exception here. Okay, now every try block should have one catch block, and here, okay, here. Now, whatever the type of exception is thrown from the this statement number 14 or line number 14, it will be uh, taken as a same arithmetic object only. Now after this, it will be converted into, okay, it will be converted into a throwable type object, and it will be given to arithmetic exception. It will be given to arithmetic exception. Now arithmetic exception, will see what type of exception is being thrown. Since the exception is thrown of arithmetic type, see here you are facing arithmetic exception only, and here also you have to write arithmetic exception only. So that time we shall tell the reason don't divide by 0. Don't divide by 0. What happened? Screen is freezed. Screen is freezed. Okay, just a minute. everyone. Am I audible and the screen is visible for all of you? Am I audible? Screen is visible. Okay, guys, fine. So I was explaining you how to handle the exception. So here you can use try and catch. Okay, using try and catch you can handle. In the try block, you have to write the statement which is responsible for exception, and in the catch block, you have to write what type of exception it is having. What type of exception it is having, you have to check, and that type of exception only you have to mention in arithmetic exception. Okay, now, okay, here in the catch block, we are telling don't divide by 0. Don't divide by 0. If you divide by 0, you'll get a arithmetic exception. You'll get a arithmetic exception if you divide by 0. Okay, next. So here, yes, if you are giving any 5 by 0, so execution will pause here only on the line number 14. Control will go to catch block, and in the catch block, we are handling currently arithmetic exception. Okay, we are going for arithmetic exception. Since the throwable type is also of arithmetic, and here we are handling arithmetic exception only, so we'll get the output don't divide by 0. Okay, so here here this line, because of this line number 14, there will be a exception and it will create one throwable type object. So that throwable type object is of arithmetic type. Okay, it is of arithmetic type. Now arithmetic exception, here it will give a reason don't divide by 0. Okay, don't divide by 0. If you divide by 0, if you divide by 0, you will get a exception. You will get a exception. Okay. So it is in the code here. Question number 5, screen number 0. So where you will get please divide by 0. Don't divide by 0. Okay. Now let us handle other exception also. So the point exception that responsible for the exception is explain try and catch again. See guys, in the try block, okay, let me explain you this again. One second. Guys. Okay, so in the try block, you will mention the statement which is responsible for the exception, and in the catch block, you will mention, okay, the type of exception which is being thrown. Okay, the type of exception which is being thrown. Okay, so how it works? How it works? Okay, let me show you here. Okay, once again. Okay, now currently here, yeah. So we shall go for try block. Okay, we shall go for the statement which is responsible for exception. Int result is equal to 5 by 0. Okay, so 5 by 0. This is a statement which is responsible for exception. It is responsible for the exception. Now, here, this statement we will enclose with a try block, because this is a statement which is responsible for exception. Now, this statement, as soon as this line execute, one throwable type object will be created. Okay, one throwable type object will be created of arithmetic exception type, address 0x1. Okay, of arithmetic exception type will be created. Why only arithmetic type? Because here we get only arithmetic exception only. Okay, here we get arithmetic exception. So that is why here one, as soon as this line executes, okay, so one throwable type object will be created and it will be thrown to the catch block to catch the exception. since whatever the type of thrown is of arithmetic type, and here also you need to have a arithmetic type exception to catch it. So catch block should catch the exception which is thrown by the statement. This is a statement responsible for exception. Now it is throwing an exception here, and that exception will be taken into the catch block. Okay, if the here arithmetic exception only it is been thrown, if the thrown exception is of not of arithmetic type, and here also you don't have any arithmetic type, you will get a exception. Okay, here you are having an exception that is of arithmetic type, and here we have created a throwable type object of arithmetic type only. After that it is throwing the exception into the catch block. So catch block now it should catch, because it is of the throwable thing which is there, which is of arithmetic type, and here, okay, and here we are having also arithmetic type only. Okay, so since the throwable type and this type of the exception present in a catch block is same, since it is same, we shall go for execution of this catch block. So it's very simple. You will write a statement which is responsible for exception inside try. Okay, if it is of arithmetic type, one object will be created of arithmetic type, and it will be thrown to the catch block. Since you are handling with arithmetic exception, here also you have to write arithmetic exception. Here also you have to write the arithmetic exception only. Now, here, when a throwable type object is created, the address will be thrown to this variable. Address of that throwable type object will be thrown to this variable. Now here, okay, now here we shall tell the reason after catching the block. Okay, so we shall tell the reason, that is divided by 0. Okay, so this is how your try and catch works. Yes, got it? Yes, Preeti, understood? Try and catch. Preeti, understood try and catch? Let me know. Okay, so yes, guys, your counselor is here. Okay, we'll resume back after the requirement announcement. Yes, Varshita, can carry on.
Thank you, ma'am. Good evening, guys. This is Vashita from announcement team. Am I audible to everyone? Okay. So, guys, here's the development requirement. So, please take a snap of this, everyone. So, guys, only for the first requirement, you have to drop a message in the QTalk app. For the rest of three, you can register in the registration link. No need to drop a message in the QTalk app. So, after registration, you have to wait for at least 1 week. So, if you do not get any responses, if you do not get any responses from them, so you can call and get the update. Okay. So please take a snap. So guys, I'll stop sharing the screen now. So guys, and I've shared the registration link, so you can register through that link. So there's a small update which we have launched new courses. So we have launched 3 new courses. It is Appium, Flutter, and Data Analyst in online. So if anyone are interested to enroll, it is a paid course, guys. It is a paid course. If you are interested, so please contact to the counselors to the mentioned number. So they will give you the more details regarding the fees and details about the course. So please contact them and get clarify your doubts. So any doubts apart from this? So any doubts, guys? Okay, so these are the update for the today's class. Thank you, guys. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, guys. Preeti, am I audible to you? Preeti, am I audible to you? Guys, am I audible to you? At least let me know. Maybe there is a network issue today. Okay, okay. Yes, Preeti, did you get it? How a try and catch works? Okay, let it be. She is not responding. We shall go further. Okay, guys, in the null pointer exception here, this is a statement which is responsible for exception. Yes is equal to null is a statement which is responsible for exception. Now, okay, the line number, okay, if you see the line number, it will be 9 because s dot 2 uppercase. So we shall execute this and we'll find out the line which is responsible for exception. Yes, line number 9 only, null dot 2 uppercase. So this is a line which is responsible for exception. So we shall enclose it with a try and catch. Okay, so we are enclosing it with the try block, and this statement is now is throwing a null pointer exception of throwable type. Now this statement is creating an object of throwable type and it is throwing to the catch block. Okay, catch block. Since the exception which is thrown is of the type a string, okay, it is a, I mean sorry, it is of null pointer exception. So here also we have to get a null pointer exception type catch block. Okay, now here see in the try block we have a statement which is responsible for exception. Now since it is responsible for the null pointer exception, here we shall create a null pointer exception, a variable. Okay, null pointer exception variable. Okay, now we shall tell the reason. Okay, we shall tell the reason, that is null should not be used for for case changing operations. Okay, so here what's happening, we are trying to change the case of the null. Okay, case of the null, we are trying to change it, but null means default. Okay, for nothing you cannot go for changing the cases. For nothing you cannot go for changing the cases. Okay, so first thing here, line number 11 is responsible for exception, so it is surrounded by try block. Now inside catch block we have to create a null pointer type exception. Okay, null pointer exception object, because this statement is throwing a, okay, I mean it is creating one throwable type object and it is throwing it to the catch block. It is throwing it to the catch block. See guys, suppose assume you're in a cricket. Okay, you are watching a cricket. If a batsman bats the ball and the ball will be going directly into the fielder hand, what will be there? What will be that situation? Batsman bats the ball and it will go directly into the fielder. That will be direct out, shoot out. Yes. Now here, that we call it as a exception handling here. That we call it as a exception handling. So here what happens is, this statement which is responsible for exception, it is creating one throwable type object and it is throwing that reference variable to that variable here. It is throwing, excuse me, it is throwing the exception of throwable type, and here the catch block should catch it. See here, s dot 2 uppercase, it is throwing null pointer exception. Directly, if you want to tell in short, this statement is throwing null pointer exception, and we have created a catch block, and we had a null pointer exception with the variable, so that we can catch if this exception is thrown. Okay, if it is thrown, we can easily catch here. So inside the catch block, we have a null pointer exception variable. Now whatever the null pointer exception output you might get, no, that will be that object reference will be stored in variable e. Now we'll get the data. Null should not be used for case changing operations. Okay, so let us let us execute this. So you'll get it as a null should not be used for case changing operations, because null means nothing. Okay, null means nothing. So nothing dot to uppercase, you can't do it. Okay, you can't go for nothing dot to uppercase, nothing dot to uppercase. Okay, this is about try and catch. Okay, this is about try and catch here. And like this, you can go for class cast exception, array index out of bounds exception, and string index out of bounds exception. In a class cast exception, directly line number 8 itself is a responsible for the, okay, it is responsible for the exception. So we shall go for a catch block here. Inside the catch block, we shall go for class cast exception in the java.lang package. Now we shall tell don't upcast okay, don't don't downcast without upcasting. Yes, yes, Sankit, right? Okay, so don't downcast without upcasting. So here also we solve the problem. Here also we solve the problem here. Don't downcast without upcasting. Reason you are getting why? Because we have solved the exception. Okay, so this is the line or statement which is responsible for exception, and that is written inside try block. So that exception will be thrown to the catch block class, and it will be stored in variable e, and it will execute the statement don't downcast without upcasting. Okay, so this is the, this is how you will handle the exception for this class cast. Same array index out of bound exception. See, now here is one small problem here. See, you have to, you can't mention directly one statement. Okay, if you want, you can mention the whole for loop, or this one statement is responsible for exception. So this one statement only you can enclose with the try block. This one statement only you can enclose it with a try block. Until we don't get the exception, this try block will execute neatly. Okay, until we don't get exception, try block will execute neatly and you'll get a proper output. But the second the try block is executing, okay, try block started executing, catch blocks will get activated and you'll get the array index out of bounds exceptions. Okay, now here 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 we are facing a array index out of bound exception, because we have given less than or equals to a dot length. Less than or equals to a dot length we have given. Okay, that is why. So in the catch block we will tell access the array elements within the limit. Array elements within the limit. Okay, so this is how you will handle a arithmetic, array index out of bounds exception. Okay, so the last one we get it as a string index out of bounds exception. So this is a statement which is responsible for exception. Right, proper condition we can say. Yes, we can tell that. Yeah, we can tell that. Yeah, we can tell right proper condition. So it might look little rude. So we shall tell that in a very nice way we shall tell access the elements within the limit. Okay, so here also same thing. Line number 10 is responsible for exception, so let us surround it with try and catch. Okay, let us surround it with a try and catch. In the catch block we shall go for string index out of bounds exception. Okay, variable e. Now here we shall go for telling access the string elements within the limit. Okay, so after telling access the elements within the access string elements within the limit, we have got your output. So here we will get the name also, here we will get the reason. Access the string elements within the limit. Okay, within the limit you can easily access within the limit. Okay, now this is how you handle an exception. Okay, I hope everybody has understood. Guys, did you get exception? Do you have an idea now what is an exception? Everybody understood? You guys have an idea what is an exception and all this checked, unchecked, everything? Did you guys understand today? Okay, guys, that's good. Okay, so it's 9 and I'll see you guys in tomorrow's class. Okay, notes and everything will be sent. Okay, today a little network issue is there. I'm really sorry for that. Okay, so that's it for today, guys, and I'll see you guys in tomorrow's class. Okay, with a good network. Okay, so try to study properly and come. Okay, yes, guys, that's it for today. Have a great evening. Take care, guys. Bye bye. Yeah, Sanket. Good night. Thanks, Samiksha. You too take care.